So this is a continuation video as promised. I want to welcome you back to another YouTube video, you beautiful hosers. And today, obviously, as you've read the title, this is going off of the same context and, well, more or less same moral principle of what we went over last video. But I also said that this video was going to be more religious catered. And by more religious catered, I mean fully religious catered. So I just want to give people a heads up because I'm well aware that there's a lot of people out there that don't appreciate it being shoved down their throat, even though I'm announcing this before the video gets started. So this is your full disclaimer. But anyways, the section that I chose to start this off, because I said we are going to use some scripture for this, and I'm going to try and keep this under 20 minutes, because that's about all the time that I have to record, so hopefully this is all done in one take, is Ecclesiastes 3, verse 1 through 8. Now, I'm not going to do the rest of Ecclesiastes 3, just because there's a shortage on time here, but what it says in this version is, there is a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens. A time to be born, a time to die. A time to plant, a time to uproot. A time to kill, and a time to heal. A time to tear down, and a time to build. A time to weep, and a time to laugh. A time to mourn, and a time to dance. A time to scatter stones, and time to gather them. A time to embrace, and a time to refrain from embracing. A time to search, and a time to give up. A time to keep and a time to throw away. A time to tear and a time to mend. A time to be silent and a time to speak. A time to love and a time to hate. A time for war and a time for peace. So, based on the representation that I gave about blessings in and amongst the chaos, there's a reason why I chose this one. I felt like it was more fitting as I had this pop into my brain, and I'm fairly certain it was God himself that said, hey, this is a perfect example. Because I thought of a particular song called Turn, 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 which if you don't know that song, it is actually what we just read there. So the moral principle of it is there is a time for everything. Time to live, time to die. Time to laugh, time to cry, so on and so forth. Now, this isn't necessarily me telling you how you have to feel, because I'm sure a lot of us have different sufferings and different pains that we all go through in life that we more or less feel like they ail us. However, there is a specific point in time where the blessings are in and amongst those times where everything is confused. Well, confused to you in a sense as opposed to confused to God, because, well, let's face the facts here. There is also another Bible verse that tells you that God is not a God of confusion. He tells you how it is, and generally it's just confusing ourselves. But I think this section of verses perfectly states exactly what I was trying to nail in my other points in the previous video that I also talked about in the video before that one, about looking at your surroundings and being grateful for those. Because every time in our lives, we're going to have a specific point where it feels like everything's falling down on us, nothing feels right, and everything just comes all crashing down at once. For some of us, it's the loss of a loved one, and for other people, it's the fear of never being with somebody, losing somebody, or overall, they feel like they have no one around them because they're just bullied all the time and they're constantly being pushed down by those they love and those they care about. And even those that they don't so much love and care about, because generally I'm thinking, who really is in love with their bully and they like them doing that to them? If that makes any sense, because I think that's about the only instance that I can think here where that's not going to apply. Off the top of my head, obviously. But anyways, There's always a time for your blessings to come in. And even when you look through the book of Jeremiah and you read that one specific verse, Jeremiah 29:11, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope and a future. And then after that one verse, particularly there, it also goes in to talking about God himself telling them, hey, I've promised these things, I'm going to do that. Shortly after that verse is spoken. And God even gives them a timeline for everything that's going to happen for them, because he said, I will do as I promised. And Ecclesiastes 3 here even further proves other things, even in our daily lives. Because I'm fairly certain we've all heard the expression, there's nothing guaranteed in life except for death and taxes. Well, although that is true, it's also partially untrue, because if you die, before the age of 16, which is legal working age, you're not really going to be paying taxes per se, but you are and you're not. So let me explain this for a second. If you're buying something at a store, yes, you're getting taxed on it. That I can see. But if, you're working a job, you're also paying taxes. That I also understand. However, the point that I'm trying to get at there is the fact of it's perceived as a specific thing. Where oh, well, everybody's going to have to pay taxes. Yes, but not everybody's going around giving a 3-year-old $5 bill to go and spend on whatever they want. Kids that die before specific ages early on in life, generally, they're not going to be paying taxes because they have no idea the value of currency. They have no idea what currency is used for, and they don't understand the concept of certain things yet. So generally, those ones, I would say, they more or less are the gray area of that entire statement. However, if you look at the other side, yes, it is totally correct, everybody dies. The Bible itself even talks about us dying to ourselves and being born a new creation. Hence why even Jesus himself had to die multiple times. Now, if you're questioning why I'm saying multiple times, because technically being baptized is the death of the old you, and then he also was obviously crucified on the cross, died on the cross, and then rolled the stones over, and I'm fairly certain we already know that he's passed away since that time, and he's not walking around now. So that's what I mean by multiple times. So, in all honesty, that's 3 deaths. But in the long run, by the time you get through the entire Bible and through the book of Revelations, it also says that we're not going to die again upon our spiritual descent from the earth. So, that itself is a blessing. So, you could die here, have a rough life, go to heaven, never have to suffer through that again, and never actually have to die. So you're actually doing a lot more in heaven than you technically are on earth. Earth is just basically a training ground. That is what the Bible teaches. Earth is a training ground to prepare you for heaven. Now, there's another quote that I'll share that life is the most difficult exam. Everybody has a different question paper, but some people try cheating off of the other ones, but everybody else has a different exam from one another. Now, that's not exactly how the quote goes, however, that's the moral principle of the quote. Is everybody's going through different things in their life, and sometimes the blessings are too far to understand, but not so close to see. And what I mean by that is your blessings could be closer than you really think they are. And your blessings could also be farther than what you think they were. For example, if you're a person that's always been craving a relationship, sometimes you find somebody online, and that's who you end up marrying, having kids with, and dying happily with. That, for example, is long. And the reason why I'm saying long is because of the fact that it's not something that's right in your face. Sure, your phone's right in your face and the internet and your computer, whatever you're using to talk to them at that particular point in time, but it's in the distant future. It's not in the here and now. If that makes any sense. I hope it does to somebody. Anyways, moving on from that. Compared to somebody meeting somebody in person, having a mutual exchange, and then obviously same result, different factor. One's close up, one's far away. One takes longer, one doesn't. Now, granted that the internet is very vast and some people like to move things very quickly because of the internet, so for that one, I would say is probably a gray area that I have no idea what the heck I'm talking about. So, moving on. Next point. Blessings in and amongst the chaos. What can be said about chaos? Chaos is everywhere, and generally, whenever there is carnage, there is always chaos following suit. Now, some of our lives, the chaos can be different things. It could be kids not listening, to your job not going the way that you planned, to your shift not going the way that it planned, where it just seems like everything's falling apart. That is a form of chaos. Because chaos does not specifically have to be one specific thing. It does not necessarily mean somebody has to die either for something to be chaotic. You can have a chaotic good, you can have a chaotic neutral, and you can have a chaotic evil. Generally, the one that we think about the most is the chaotic evil. And if you don't know what the other two are, I strongly suggest you look it up. Because I'm fairly certain we all know somebody in our lives that fits in one of these areas. They could be neutral good, neutral as in just neutral, neutral evil, and then you have your lawful good, lawful neutral, lawful bad, chaotic. I forget what the third one is. But anyways, everybody's technically in their life assigned one little slot of the 9. Now, for a lot of us, we always think as chaos always going to be a bad thing, which normally 99.9% of the time the chaos is a bad thing. However, what about that 0.01% or that 0.1%? What about that? Can you give any examples of chaos being a good thing? Because chaos doesn't necessarily have to be evil. Chaos sometimes can actually lead to good things in abundance further on down the line. So yes, it may be bad at that point in time, but further down the line, it's not going to always be that way. For example, now, I'm not going to go into great detail on this because I'm fairly certain everybody deserves their privacy. However, there have been incidents at my work where people have gotten injured from the strangest of things. And being somebody who had their first aid, and I say had because mine's now expired, there's a certain understanding that we all have to have when we're entering into these situations. Okay, this person could be panicking, and that's just going to, wreak havoc on everything that I'm trying to do. So, first thing that a person normally does is they introduce themselves, they go in, they say, hey, my name is fill in the blank here. I'm going to try and help you. What do you need me to do? And if they're unresponsive, we have many different things that we are allowed to do. If they're responsive and tell you that they want an ambulance and they don't want you to touch them, okay, that's more or less a weight lifted off of your shoulders. But also, if you know they're in dire need and they're going to die before the ambulance gets there, that's generally when a veto card is used. And I'm saying veto card because that's generally when you veto their decision, which doesn't happen a whole lot, but it can happen. For example, if you see somebody in a burning car and they're having issues getting out and they're saying, no, just wait for the fire truck, but you know you can get them out lickety-split without injuring them more than they are, that's generally the type of scenario there. But not everybody sees it that way, so it's going to be one of the areas that's more difficult, per se. But anyways, the reason why I'm using that as an example is for the fact of, it may be chaos then, but further down the line after they get better and they know that you're the one that helped them, generally they're going to feel blessed that somebody was being there, more or less being their guardian angel. Now, going back to Ecclesiastes here, our blessings always have a time and a place for when they are set and for when they are to occur. You can try and force these blessings to come early into your life, but generally all you're doing is more or less wasting your own time thinking about things that could have been or things that should have been, rather than actually focusing on the, what do I have to do to work on myself to get to this point where I can feel truly blessed. Generally, that's where a lot of people need self-reflection, and it's generally one of the points in time that nobody enjoys doing, because nobody wants to look at themselves and be like, hey, guess what? I have a problem. Yeah, I'm the problem. Nobody wants to be like that. And to be honest, nobody wants to feel like that forever. And the blessings themselves, even though they have a specific point in time, that's up for God to decide, not for us. So, sure, things may suck now, but maybe 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the line, yes, it may be just a distant memory of things that could have been, or that thing that happened to you, or that thing that you saw. But it's not always going to be there forever. If it's a good thing, I'm not entirely sure you should idolize that. Actually, you shouldn't idolize that at all. But it's not a bad thing to go back and reminisce about what we perceived as the good times, depending on what it is, of course. However, in the very specific line, a time to search and a time to give up, a time to keep and a time to throw away, which is verse 6. There's a lot of things in our lives that could use that in particular. Same with a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance. There's a time for everything. There's a time and a place for everything. I'm fairly certain we've all heard this famous line spoken to us before. And sometimes, in and amongst the chaos, is just right in that particular point in time that we need to be so that we can better ourselves for the future. And that itself is a blessing in and amongst the chaos. I know that was like 18 minutes of beating around the bush to get to the final point, but alas, if you've made it to the video, I'm proud of you. Odds are, next video, probably going to not continue talking about blessings in amongst the chaos. We'll find something else to talk about. However, I think we are going to bring scripture back for that one, and it's probably going to be a lot different than this last topic. So, that being said, I hope you're having a fantastic 2022, because we got a long road ahead of us, and probably a lot of changes are coming. So, I hope you're having a fantastic 2022, and if you're not, I hope it gets better for you sooner rather than later. Peace out, and I will see you all at the very end of the month on Friday.